Imagine waking up not on a soft bed, but in a damp, narrow hold made of rotting wood, soaked in the scent of spoiled salt, tobacco smoke, and something fouler than poverty. Time decaying. Morning hasn't arrived, yet the soft stir of waves rubs against the hull like a threat to your freezing bones. There is no blanket, no window. Only the sound of the ship's groan like the breath of an old woman abandoned by the storm. Around you, foreign bodies lie scattered, immersed in sleep that never truly deepens. A fat man snores nearby, his breath reeking of stale rum. A young boy, perhaps not even 12, curls inside a torn sack, clutching the hardened leather of a dead sailor. And silently you ask, "Where am I? Is this hell?" But no, this isn't hell. This is just another night aboard a 17th century pirate ship, where darkness and hunger twist together like knotted ropes. Here, time isn't read by clocks, but by the number of cuts on your feet, the salt stains on your skin, the sound of a whip cracking at dawn. You force yourself up, bumping your head against the unforgiving low ceiling. The floor is slick, coated in a film of something seawater, urine, or last night's vomiture. Not sure. No one cares. Even the rats seem reluctant to tread here. The air is heavier than fear. Every breath a gamble between surviving or coughing up blood. You follow the slow crowd upward, stepping onto the deck. The sun has not risen, but its light already feels like an insult. The sea wind greets you with a sharp chill that slices your pores. And there the captain stands, tall, silent, his face as old as the ship's timbers. He looks at you for a moment, and you understand your life today depends on his coming orders. Orders that are usually short, hard, never repeated. The ropes must be pulled, the mast must be checked. You haven't eaten, but your hands must work. Here, hunger is no excuse. Wounds are no excuse. Even death is considered merely an inconvenience. A man fell overboard yesterday. He couldn't swim, but no one screamed. No ceremony. Just a murmur. One less mouth to feed. You begin to understand this night isn't about surviving sleep. It's about surviving. The salty stench never fades. Flies buzz among the barrels of stale water. Fresh water is gold here, but don't be fooled. Even gold can stink. Someone vomits near you. You simply shift your foot. No time for disgust. That luxury was left at the last port. Now there is only labor, wind, commands, and whispers that make you believe you'll return home someday. Though no one knows where home is, and the night has only just begun. When dawn arrives, it does not come as hope. It arrives as a whip rising in the sky. The dim orange light slaps the unfriendly sea, exposing scars on the ship's body, on your skin, and on hope that grows thinner by the hour. Even the seagulls refuse to greet. They know this is not a resting place, but a journey to nowhere. You glance at your hands, and beneath your nails lie sea grime and dried old blood. Your skin peels from salt, and small wounds split open wide. But there's no time to complain. A complaining sailor is one step from the lash, and two from burial at sea. On this ship, you have no name, only function. A young man beside you, his face still soft. His eyes still carry traces of the world he left, shivers while holding the rope, his fingers cracked and bleeding. But no one helps, not out of cruelty, but because every hand is busy surviving. Compassion is a luxury left behind with the land. You raise your head and see the sky brighten, but light doesn't mean warmth. The wind remains cold, piercing your bones, and every breath feels like inhaling painful sea dust. Your stomach growls, but there's no breakfast. Sometimes only salt water, pretending to be soup. Sometimes rock-hard bread that must be soaked before it can be chewed. And when you eat, you don't sit at a table. No spoon, no plate. Just hands and an old piece of cloth as a mat. Food aboard a pirate ship isn't for pleasure, it's fuel for a body to survive sail pulling. Here, eating is a quiet, hurried ritual. The day moves slow, but the tasks come fast. Ropes undone, sails tangled, leaking barrels, dirty deck, and an angry captain. Always one scream in the air. Work, no warning. No time to think. You just move, because a second late may earn a blow from behind. Not out of hatred, but from discipline sharpened by fear. And when rest comes, it's not a luxury. It's merely the delay of pain. Sitting in a deck corner, you stare out at the endless water, wondering if beneath it might be more peace. Many sailors think so. Sometimes they jump not from despair, but because the ocean looks more honest than the men aboard this vessel. The wind carries voices from the stern. Some men laugh, perhaps from drink, perhaps from madness. Others fight in whispers, arguing over the last sip of rum or a slightly drier sleeping spot for the night. There are no true friends on a pirate ship. Even brothers might sell you for a pouch of coins that may never reach port. And behind it all, there are old songs mumbled low. Songs about home, about mothers waiting, about lands that will never be touched again. But these sounds are quickly drowned by whistles and calls from the helm. There is no time for nostalgia on a ship with no future. You want to write a letter, but to whom and with what? There's no ink. Paper belongs only to the captain's log. Even a pen is unknown in this dim space. Your thoughts are kept only in tired memory. And if you die, they vanish without trace, like the foam behind the ship, breaking and disappearing. An evening hasn't even arrived, but your body already feels like it has survived 2 weeks of war, when in truth, it's only been one night. Evening arrives not as a comfort, but as a slow warning. The sunlight tilts westward, cutting through cabins and decks with dull red streaks like old wounds that never healed. The sea still ripples softly, but the sky begins to speak in a dark language. The sailors glance upward, their faces pale not out of fear of the storm, but because they know a storm means working twice as hard with no promise of living twice as long. You're assigned to clean the deck. A coarse coconut broom dances between bits of charcoal, fish spines, and dried vomit. Nothing is ever truly clean on this ship. Cleaning is just routine, a ritual to make filth look arranged, not erased. And between sweeps, your nose picks up the scent of dried blood left from 3 days ago, when a man was sliced for stealing a piece of apple. There was no trial, no argument. The captain spoke one short sentence: steal one, lose one. And one finger flew that morning, leaving a red mark on the wooden table that never got cleaned. On a pirate ship, justice isn't about right or wrong. It's about order enforced by fear. As you crouch, you notice the legs of a man pale, trembling. He doesn't speak, only sits, staring blankly at the sea. His mouth moves as if in prayer, but no sound comes out. Maybe he's speaking to God. Maybe to a child he left behind at the last port. Who knows? On this ship, grief is a private disease that must be hidden like a contagious illness. Someone tosses a bucket of water across the deck, not to clean, but to drive away flies. The water is salty, dirty, carrying the scent of a storage barrel gone slimy, but no one says anything. Complaining about smell would mark you as weak. And weakness, like an open wound, invites punishment. The sky grows darker. The wind changes its tune, first a hush, then a piercing whine like a broken flute. The captain begins ordering the sails tied down. Everyone rushes. No training. No time for fear. You just move like an old puppet tugged by string. Your heart races, not from danger, but because your body knows. Tonight will be long. And when the storm comes, it doesn't arrive like in the movies. It comes without soundtrack, without dramatic lightning. It simply is cold, dark, wild. The ropes tighten, the sails shiver. The ship groans as if ready to split. Someone screams, and their voice is swallowed by the wind. You don't know who fell, and you can't find out. Finding out might mean you fall too. Water begins pouring in from the ship's side. Freshwater tanks rattle. Some barrels break loose, rolling like panicked beasts. One strikes your leg, nearly sending you down. But there's no time for pain. You must endure. Because if you fall, no hand will pull you back. You tie yourself to the mast with an old rope. Around you, waves slap your face like an elder's disgusted palm. A storm at sea is not just about wind and rain. It's about loneliness, about thoughts screaming in silence, about wondering whether God even hears prayers from a place this foul. 1 hour, 2, 3. No one knows. Time stops inside the storm. There is only stumbling, shallow breathing, and the tiny hope that this ship is tougher than the sea, and that your body is tougher than fate. Eventually, the storm begins to fade, but there's no cheer, no embrace. Only bodies collapsed on the ship floor, breathing like tired animals too filthy to be forgiven. And the sky, satisfied, drizzles softly like a final insult before going silent again. Night falls, and you realize you're still alive. But you also know you are no longer the person you were this morning. Night on a pirate ship is not the night known by land dwellers. There are no soft lanterns, no chirping crickets, no soothing scent of damp earth. Here, the night is a hungry creature standing at the edge of the deck, watching the breaths of sailors who sleep with one eye open. You lie on the cold, uneven wooden boards. No pillow, no blanket. Just a damp shirt that hasn't dried in 3 days. Beside you is an old man grinding his teeth in his sleep. Next to him, a young boy with his hand still wrapped in torn bandages, shivering like a dry leaf caught in the wind. No privacy. No comfort. Only exhaustion, indifferent to how you collapse into rest. Sometimes someone wakes up and vomits in the corner. No one scolds them. Everyone's done it. Sometimes a scream rises from the lower cabin, a nightmare, or maybe possession. But no one goes to help. Helping means sacrificing your few minutes of rest. And here, rest is more precious than gold. The sky is black and full of clouds, hiding the moon that should have been your only friend. The wind carries soft sounds like a grandmother whispering spells. The sails creak, the ropes tighten, and the ship shifts like an ancient beast still hungry. In the distance, the waves strike the hull like whispers of death too patient to rush. You close your eyes, trying to remember home, but your memory blurs. Your mother's face is like morning mist, faint, incomplete. Your brother's voice only an echo lost between waves and shouts. The smell of warm bread in the morning replaced by the sour scent of a leaking barrel. The sea doesn't just steal distance, steals time. It erases who you were. Someone sings in the corner. A quiet, broken voice, singing an old song about a port that will never be returned to. You don't know who he is. But for a moment, the song feels like a small hug amidst the cold and the hard floor. Then come the footsteps, heavy, slow. Everyone knows that sound. It's the captain's leather boots walking between half-sleeping bodies. Sometimes he just passes by. Sometimes he kicks someone's leg. Sometimes he pulls a man up and takes him to the back, never to return. No one dares to ask. No one keeps record. On this ship, disappearance is part of the routine. The captain isn't always angry, but he's never kind. His eyes are like iron doors, cold, hard, and sealed. No one knows what goes on inside his head. But everyone knows one thing. He once burned his entire crew on an old ship for trying to divide treasure without his permission. That tale is whispered ear to ear, never confirmed, but enough to make every man bow when he passes. Eventually, you fall asleep. But sleep on this ship is not healing sleep. It's like slowly drowning in cold water. Your mind stays alert. Your ears still listen, your body ready to leap at any moment. Even in dreams, you're still at sea. No escape. Nowhere to hide. And when you wake, whether from the night bell or the scream of a rat trapped in the galley, you can't know if you slept for an hour or just 10 minutes. Time becomes liquid. Days blur. Life is only about the next second, whether you survive it or vanish into the nameless waves. It is the first night of many more to come. And even after surviving it, your body does not believe it's still alive. But your soul, your soul begins to change. You no longer think of the port. You no longer wait to return. You simply become a part of this shipwood, rope, and pain, repeated without end. Morning dose and tea arrive like a promise of safety comes like mockery from a sky pretending to care. The sun peeks out timidly, its light pale like the face of a corpse floating in a long-forgotten harbor. The air remains damp, salty, and laced with a scent that mixes old sweat, rotting seaweed, and something you don't want to identify. Your body feels older than it did the night before. Joints don't greet the day with vigor, but with silent aches spreading from neck to lower back. Your bones speak not in words, but in subtle tremors whispering, "You were not made for this." But the sea doesn't care. Breakfast arrives in its usual disgrace. Thin cornmeal mush served in a dented tin bowl. No spoon, just dirty fingers shoveling food into mouths. Between bites, you find a splinter of wood perhaps from a barrel or from a broken utensil. But there's no complaint. On this ship, food is a rare grace, and wood is a flavor one learns to forgive. Across the course table sits a man once known as a drunk in the port of Havana. Now nearly saintly, not from repentance, but because not a single drop of alcohol exists on board. He stares into his bowl as if gazing into the core of life itself. Maybe thinking, maybe praying, or maybe just waiting for something that will never come. After breakfast, the work resumes, summoned like an invisible whip. There are ropes to coil, sails to inspect, planks to patch. No holidays. No breaks. Not even if you're feverish or bleeding. This ship is a dragon's mouth, always hungry, always chewing through human effort. And amid that labor, you begin to notice the faces changing. These are no longer ordinary men. They are the shadows of the land lives they left behind. Hollow-eyed, sunburnt, fingers cracked like dry fruit skin. They laugh without cause and fall silent too long. Some speak to themselves, and no one intervenes. Then comes the moment all dread. The sighting of another ship on the horizon. At first, just a white dot, small, insignificant. But the click of the captain's spyglass changes everything. He stands like a marble statue, giving commands in a voice calm but sharp. Prepare, just one word, but it says everything. You see the crew move, not in panic. Not with chaos, but with the rhythm of a ritual practiced 1,000 times in nightmares. Cannons readied, swords sharpened, pistols tucked into belts. No one knows yet whether the ship in the distance is enemy or prey, but pirates aren't taught to wait passively. They act as if every foreign sail is a question to be answered with gunpowder. You are given one task, to fetch powder from the lower hold. It's dark, cramped, stifling. Your steps are unsteady because here, a single spark could become hell, but you have no choice. Even fear has no place here. It must be hidden, locked, buried like a wound too dangerous to expose. After half an hour, the distant ship veers west and vanishes. Whether it fled or was merely passing, no one knows. But an hour later, no one mentions it again, as if it never existed. On this ship, stories don't matter unless they bleed. But you know one thing. Every second at sea is a wait between life and death. And each morning is not a fresh start. It is just a continuation of a nightmare without a clear end. Midday on the ship is no time for rest. The sun hangs in the sky like the unblinking eye of a demon, beating down on dry, exhausted bodies without mercy. Its heat is not pleasant nothing like the gentle warmth of a wheat field or a backyard. This heat peels your skin, burns your nape, and makes the inside of your skull feel as if it's boiling. Your clothes, damp and cold the night before, have now turned into sweat-soaked prisons. Every movement scrapes like hot sand between your skin. Water is a treasure rarer than gold. Each sip you take feels like stealing from the divine. They give you a small cup pale yellow liquid, slightly salty, slightly spoiled. But there's no choice. On this ship, thirst is the only loyal companion. The deck at noon is a stage for exhaustion. No laughter, no songs. Just the groaning of wood beneath tired feet and the lazy, hot wind that feels like the breath of the underworld. Sailors move half aware, like ancient machines forced to run. They lift, tie, pull, sometimes simply stand, staring at the empty sky as if hoping for a hole to swallow them whole. You begin to lose your sense of time. Hours mean nothing. Days are not marked by calendars, but by events. The day a flying fish slapped my face, the day the captain broke a man's ribs, the day the sky turned red but no storm came. Time becomes a story, not a number. Sometimes someone faints from the heat. Their body is dragged aside and doused with salt water, not to refresh them, but to move them out of the way. There is no pity on this deck. Compassion stayed in the harbor long before the sails were raised. In the midst of dull routine, there is one moment many anticipate: the announcement of night watch duty. Not because it's pleasant, but because anyone not picked gets to sleep early. And anyone who is moosed stay awake with tired eyes, an alert heart, and a body bitten by the cold ocean air. But today is different. The captain calls for combat drills. "Take your weapons," he says, his voice like wet, heavy rope. Everyone moves slowly, not from laziness, but because their bodies have shed parts of their souls. They line up on deck, most without spirit, like living corpses awaiting orders. The drill isn't just practice seats a performance of power. The captain watches like an old, cynical god. He isn't looking for perfect technique, he's looking for weakness. And when he sees it, he makes a silent note, storing it for later, when punishment is needed to remind everyone who commands the sea. You hold your sword, but your hand trembles. No one pays attention to you, but you know the captain sees everything. You try to mimic the man beside you, but you know your movements are wrong, too stiff, too hesitant. On this ship, hesitation could mean death. When the drill ends, the captain points to one man. No reason, no explanation. The man is told to go below. Everyone knows he won't come back the same. You just stand there, your breath not yet returned. But the lesson of the day is already clear at sea. Even practice can draw real blood. Night arrives without beauty. No romantic stars, no deep blue sky that invites poetry. Only a thick darkness, like spilled ink, draped in salty mist, hanging low, swallowing faces and erasing the line between sky and sea. You don't know where the ocean ends and the heavens begin. It all seems to melt into one vast emptiness, slowly devouring the ship. The night wind carries strange sounds. The ship's wood creaks like the groans of an old beast. Ropes sway and hum on their own, and faint whispers seem to drift through the waves. Maybe it's just the wind. Maybe it's not. Some say the spirits of drowned sailors still circle the ship, whispering to those close to surrender. And the night is when they speak the loudest. Night watch is a painful form of meditation. Standing still for hours, staring in one direction with only the waves as company. But not everyone can manage it in peace. The mind, when left alone too long, begins to betray. It opens doors best left closed. Memories, regrets, shadows. Some crewmen start laughing to themselves. Some cry. Others stare at the sea too long, as if hoping the waves might call them down. You start to truly see other faces at night. Because in daylight, everyone is busy being machines. But at night, when silence reigns and the world feels heavier, the human returns. You see a pair of eyes on deck, not just tired, but broken. They don't speak, but their gaze begs the starless sky for something a miracle, or maybe just an end. Then come the stories, whispered like secret prayers, about crewmates who vanished without a word, about sailors who went below deck and never came back, about empty cabins that echo footsteps at midnight. There's no proof, but everyone knows. Every ship has ghosts. Sometimes they wear the faces of the dead. Sometimes they're only voices. But always, they're part of the voyage. You begin to ask yourself, not when you elves go home, but if there is a home. The land world feels like an old dream. You're not sure there's still a house or a family, or even a name that belongs to you. At sea, time dissolves everything, even identity, even prayer. By the third hour of the night, a young sailor vomits beside you, not from food, but from dread. He's been on board just 2 weeks, and already his eyes look like an old well, deep, dark, holding no reflection. You pat his back, not out of kindness, but because you understand. And he says nothing. He doesn't need to. At sea, suffering isn't spoken. It's survived. That night passes slowly. Each second like a grain of sand that refuses to fall. No grand events, just a silence so sharp it cuts, like a knife that scrapes but never stops. And when dawn creeps across the horizon, the sky doesn't glow gold. It stays gray, flat, empty, and you realize you've made it through another night. But there is no triumph, no warm embrace or sense of pride. Only a deep breath and the truth that another night will come. Just as dark, just as cold, just as silent. Dawn is no savior. It's only the quiet transition between two forms of suffering. As the sky lightens, no hope rises with it. Only routine returns like a burden that never leaves your shoulders. Sounds begin to rise. Chains clinking, boots on wet wood, and the groans of sailors trying to wake from sleep never deep enough to be called rest. One of the oldest crewmen, a man with few teeth and permanently red eyes, begins to sing. An old sailor's song about a woman in port who will never wait, about rum more faithful than prayer. His voice is hoarse, nearly a whisper, but the words hang in the air like fog that won't leave. No one tells him to stop. Songs like that are the only true inheritance sailors own. Lyrics more lasting than their bodies. Morning aboard is when your body refuses to obey. Joints feel rusted, muscles scream. And your stomach, if it holds anything at all, complains about hard biscuits and salted meat that resembles boot leather. But food is still food. And on this ship, you learn not to complain about the food, because the food never complains about you. Today, another sound, one that makes every head turn. Sail on the horizon. It's the kind of call that can bring joy or doom. The captain appears at once, eyes narrowed with calculation. He orders a lookout to the mast. Everyone waits, time frozen, seconds stretching like hours. Unknown flag. Whispers ripple through the crew. A merchant ship. Another pirate. Or maybe, an enemy. The captain decides to pursue. Your breath shortens. A sea chase isn't a horse race, it's a symphony of chaos. Sails drawn to full ropes, yanked in haste, and shouted orders battling the wind's howl. Your body is forced to run, climb, tie, adjust, no time to think. Your heart pounds like a war drum. No one knows who the target is, but all know one truth. If it's stronger, there will be battle. If it's weaker, there will be plunder. No negotiation, no mercy. At sea, the only law is who shoots first and who survives. You look to the horizon, and there it is. The silhouette of another ship, growing closer. The wind shifts. Clouds gather overhead. The waves grow restless. Even nature seems to hold its breath. Some sailors begin to prepare. Weapons cleaned. Gunpowder checked. Knives slid into boots. Pistols tucked into belts. Some change shirts not for tidiness, but to wear their lucky cloth, the one they wore last time they survived a fight. There are no charms here, only memories. The captain gives the order. Clear the deck, take positions. No sound but shouted instructions. No one speaks of fear, because fear is weakness, and weakness earns punishment. Then a voice from the mast. They're prepping the cannons. Now everyone knows, this isn't a trade meeting. This will be a bloody day. And you stand there, fingers gripping the rope, eyes locked on the approaching vessel. Your heart doesn't just beat, it pounds your chest as if it wants to escape the ship altogether. You ask yourself, will this be your day? Or will you survive once more, only to return to nights full of ghosts and dawns that never bring relief? Tension explodes in a single thunderous blast that splits the world apart. The first cannon fires a roar of iron and fire that shakes your bones. The pursued ship returns fire. Then a third shot, and suddenly everything is smoke, screams, and splintered wood. The air thickens with gunpowder and the taste of iron on your tongue. Orders blur into chaos. Bits of shouted words lost in the storm. Trim the sails. Load the guns. Hold the starboard side. But you don't need every command. Your body moves without asking, like a creature trained by fear. Your muscles act before your thoughts can protest. You see a sailor collapse, blood on his face, eyes wide as if asking, "Is this the end?" But there's no time to answer. Another man rushes past with a powder keg, and as you turn, a shard of wood strikes your arm hot, sharp, but not fatal. Not enough to stop you. The ships close in so near you can see the enemy's eyes. Strange faces, just as weary, just as bloodthirsty. There are no heroes here. Just two vessels tearing each other apart for gold, for hollow glory, for one more day alive. Then comes the deadliest part, close combat. Ropes are thrown, ships lash together. The two worlds collide in chaos. Like wild beasts, the decks become battlegrounds. Swords drawn, axes swinging, screams melting into sobs. The scent of powder mixes with blood and sweat. You're forced to fight not like a knight, with honor, but like a beast afraid of death. The knife in your hand no longer feels light. Every strike is a plea not to win, but to survive. A man charges at you, sword aimed at your chest. You parry on instinct, shove back hard, and he falls. You don't know if he's dead. You don't look back. For 5 minutes, the world loses shape. Time stands still. Only heartbeats, heavy breaths, and the ache in every limb. Out the corner of your eye, you see the captain fighting 2 men at once, and somehow, he holds people's scream prayers and curses together. There's no holiness in sea battles. Eventually, the noise fades. The enemy retreats. Ropes are cut. The other ship drifts away slowly, carrying its dead and wounded. Some sailors fire after them, but the captain stops them. "That's enough," he says softly. And you know, this isn't a victory. It's just ... survival. The deck is full of bodies, some still, some writhing, some just sitting, staring. Blood trickles down the wood, mingling with a soft drizzle that begins to fall. A small blessing, or maybe the sky's sorrow. You lean against the mast, shaking not from exhaustion, but from life, because you're still here. The world didn't end. But part of you, that soft human part, might have fallen on this deck. As the others clean the bodies, patch the ship, and count what was lost, you just sit, watching the sea that remains unchanged, indifferent to all this. The waves still roll. The wind still blows. And far away, gulls circle, searching for another ship to follow. The day isn't over. But for you, the world has changed color. And you begin to understand why old sailors laugh in their sleep, why they never speak of the past, and why nights are so heavy. Because at sea, the wounds aren't just in the flesh. They go deeper. Only after everything falls silent do you realize how harsh this world is. Not because of the cannons, not because of the blood, but because of the silence itself. After the chaos, what remains is heavy breath, the drip of water from soaked sails, and the whisper of wind, the only music this world knows. Like an unwound death bell, the quiet escorts souls who will never return to land. The ship moves slowly, like an old body wounded but not yet willing to die. The surviving crew return to work, saying little, Some wounds are better left unnamed. Some names go unspoken, because if you say them, you'll remember their faces. And if you remember their faces, the night will grow heavier. You help pull a torn sail. Your hands burn, palms bleeding, but no one notices. On this ship, everyone's hands are bloodied. If not by injury, then by ropes, wood, salt, and sins that slowly erode the person you once were. The captain walks across the deck. His steps are heavy, not from wounds, but from weight. He looks around, then speaks softly. We gain nothing today, but we're still alive. No one replies. No need to. Below deck, sailors begin to reset hammocks, clean away blood, and discard torn clothing. There is no ceremony for the dead. No burial. Only a strip of cloth, a weight stone, and a whispered prayer before their bodies are dropped into the sea. Delivered by waves, devoured by fish, forgotten by wind. Maybe it's kinder than being buried in foreign soil. You sit near a cannon, back resting, eyes staring blankly at the deck. Your body is still, but your mind wanders. Backward, to home if that still exists. To a mother who once held you, the smell of warm bread, the sound of children playing in a field. Those memories swirl like thin mist, unreal but comforting. Another sailor sits beside you. His face is young, but his eyes are old. He doesn't speak. He just stares at the unchanging sea, as if searching for something beyond the horizon. Maybe land, maybe escape. Maybe just a hope, not yet completely dead. Night slowly arrives, like a heavy blanket pulled over the wounds of the world. Stars appear one by one, dim but present. And here you are on splintered wood, atop a cold ocean, beneath a silent sky. Enduring not because you're strong, but because there's no other choice. Someone begins singing again. A different song, same sorrow. A song of lost lovers, of harbors never reached, of nights too long. And somehow, the song makes everything feel more real. You close your eyes, try to sleep. But you know, tonight will be like all the others. Your body may rest, but your soul will keep sailing through mist, across waves, brushing memories that refuse to stay gone. Because on this ship, night never truly ends. It only waits to return tomorrow in another form. And dawn is just a pause, not a promise. Morning arrives without warning, not with golden softness like in poetry, but with a blinding whiteness that stings your eyes. The sun rises like an angry ruler, revealing wounds on the deck that haven't dried. Everything looks more real in daylight. And that's not a good thing. Bloodstains, splinters from the battle, and the faces that didn't return all of them now stare back at you, silent but heavy. A pirate's day isn't about living. It's about postponing death. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is a hard piece of stale bread altered by the sea air, and maybe a cup of sour, briny water. There's no time to complain. Even your tongue doesn't want to speak. Dry wind brushes your face, carrying the scent of salt and unwashed bodies. Some of the crew try to splash their faces with a bucket of rainwater saved from the night before. But it's more ritual than hygiene. Nothing is clean here. Not the body, not the soul, not the heart. You walk slowly across the deck, seeing the few remaining crew. Some stare blankly at the sea, some try patching torn sails, some just stand still bodies, unsure if they're alive or just not dead yet. You feel like one of them, a rusty bolt in an old machine that keeps turning even though every piece is cracked. Up above, the captain stands at the ship's edge, gazing far into the horizon. Maybe hoping for land, maybe just lying to himself. You know what he's thinking: supplies are low. 1 barrel of water left. Food barely counts as food. And no loot was gained from yesterday's fight. Questions begin to form, though unspoken. Where are we going? What's the point of this? And the scariest: how long before we start looking at each other as ... the last resource? Ships have gone missing not because of storms, but because of hunger. When the sea gives nothing, men begin taking from each other. You think about that quietly, but you're not alone. You notice a thin man staring at your hands a little too long, then quickly looking away. No words are exchanged, but something is understood. If no harbor is found in the next 2 days, everything might change. The ship could become a hell deeper than the ocean itself. By late afternoon, the sky begins to shift. Clouds race faster. The wind carries whispers from the wrong direction. Some seabirds fly low, a sign that a storm is waiting on the horizon. Sailors glance at each other. No one says it, but all of them know. Tonight will be long, and not all will see the sun again. The deck is reinforced, some sails pulled down. Preparations begin, but there is no real readiness for a storm at sea. Storms don't care about courage. They come like angry gods, tossing ships like toys. And you know, within hours, your life could become foam, swallowed by the dark. Night falls like a hammer. The sky blackens, the sea writhes, and the ship groans like an old spine. As the storm creeps near, you sit in a corner of the ship, heart pounding, and a prayer slips from your lips, not because you're religious, but because sometimes, when the world shuts all doors, the sky is the only place left to speak to. The storm didn't arrive with thunderclaps or lightning bolts. It came like the breath of something ancient, long, deep, and filled with wrath. The sky cracked into a dirty gray, and rain fell like whips from above, lashing a deck already tired. The wind screamed, not like a whistle, but like a soul begging to escape its own body. Waves rose taller than the masts, as if the sea wanted to reclaim everything it once let pass. You tried to stand, but the ship had lost its sense of direction. The deck became a world that shifted and swayed, and human feet were nothing more than illusions of balance. Every step was a wager on survival. The sailors shouted at one another not to give orders, but to convince themselves they still existed. Human voices sounded absurd when pitted against the fury of sky and sea. A rope struck your shoulder. You were thrown backward, body slamming into a barrel, your knee split open. But there was no time to feel pain. Each second was a contest between breath and drowning, between staying aboard or becoming part of the sea forever. Your eyes squint against the salty downpour. Your mouth screamed something, but even you weren't sure it came from yourself. someone tumbled past the hatch and vanished beneath a wave. No time for grief, no time to mourn. The ocean waits for no one, and you begin to understand. In the middle of a storm, no one dies dramatically. They simply disappear. Like scraps of paper carried off by the wind, no trace, no name. The ship groaned loudly, as if the wood and nails within it had begun to pray. Sails tore, ropes lashed like snakes. Everything once solid now seemed fragile. And when lightning struck near the main mast, you smelled burning wood. A brief fire bloomed, then drowned in rain. But in those few seconds, you realized no place is truly safe. Not the sea, not the deck, not even under the rain. The captain still stood in his place, eyes locked on the furious sky. He didn't speak. One hand clutched a compass. The other gripped the hat that nearly flew off. You wondered, how did he stay upright while the world collapsed around him? Perhaps because he knew, if he fell, everything would fall with him. And then, amid the howling wind, the slashing rain, and the unrelenting waves, you felt a strange peace. Not because you were safe, but because you had surrendered. Because you realized that fighting the sea is the most foolish thing a human can do. So you stopped resisting. Closed your eyes, clung to the mast, and gave your life to the waves, whether they would swallow or spare you. And in that moment, everything slowed. As if the world held its breath, screams faded. Rain turned into whispers. Waves ceased their assault. And you didn't know if this was the end, or just the pause before the final fall. And in that pause, you heard something, not a voice from the storm, nor a sound from the ship, but a small voice inside you. The voice of your childhood. The sound of home. The sound of something long gone, now returning to whisper, if this is the end, at least you're not alone. Morning didn't come as it used to. It didn't arrive with birdsong or sunlight sneaking shyly into the cabin. It came as a strange silence. No shouting, no footsteps, no roaring waves. Just the sound of water dripping from soaked ropes and wood creaking softly like the bones of an old man who could barely move. You opened your eyes slowly, and the first thing you saw was the sky, not black, not blue, but a faded gray, like a painting washed too long by rain. The wind was gentle now, as if it had forgotten its rage. Even the sea seemed like a beast too tired to move, no longer crashing, only breathing long and slow. Your body felt heavy, not just from the bruises and wet clothes, but from the strange burden of gratitude creeping in uninvited. You were alive. Somehow, still clutched the mast you had hugged like a second soul the night before, and now you noticed how tightly you'd held it. Your nails were bleeding, but the pain felt like a reminder you were still here. You stood slowly. The deck was covered in debris, ropes tangled, torn sails danced limply. Some crew lay slumped in place, some unmoving, some groaning, and in the far corner, a corpse stranded, its face pressed into a wooden beam. No one cried, no ceremony. Just a silence deeper than the sea itself. The captain sat slouched against the half-broken wheel. His face no longer angry, but not peaceful either. He looked like someone who had accepted a truth that couldn't be bargained with. He stared blankly at the sea, maybe searching for stars that never had a chance to shine, or maybe just waiting for the next wave that never came. "We're still intact," he said softly, more to himself. "But that doesn't mean we're saved." And he was right. The ship now looked more like a large raft. The mainsail was destroyed. Water seeped into the hull. Food was gone. Fresh water, tainted. But more disturbing than all this damage, the map was lost. The only guide. The only reminder that this journey had a destination gone to the storm. Now you drift, going nowhere. No idea where to return. Just old wood, tired bodies, and a sky that hung above like a forgotten promise. You walked to the side of the ship, looking out at the sea that suddenly felt unfamiliar. No birds, no other ships. Just an unending line stretching in every direction. The world felt round. Time stood still. And you began to wonder, was this just a loss of direction? Or had you crossed into a place not marked on any map? Someone murmured behind you, "Maybe we weren't supposed to survive." Those words hung in the air. No response. No denial. Just silence. Because deep down, everyone began to feel the same. That maybe last night was meant to be the end. And this morning was just a continuation that wasn't planned. It's an extension of a fate unfinished. And in that silence, you thought of home. Not out of longing, but from the fear that you might never return. Home now felt like a place from a story, not from memory. And even your name, the one you once spoke with pride, now sounded strange inside your head. The sea had changed everything. It hadn't just drowned ships, it had drowned time, identity, and even the very idea of who you were. That day moved slowly, like an hourglass whose grains were too lazy to fall. The crew wandered like human shadows, not because they knew what to do, but because their bodies hadn't yet given up. There were no orders, no destination. Just hollow routines, performed to preserve the illusion of being alive. Some tried to patch the sail, though there wasn't enough fabric. Others bailed water from the hull, even knowing it would seep back in. A few sat still, staring at the sky or sea, as if looking for a sign in places that never gave answers. You sat at the edge of the deck, carving into the wood with the tip of a small knife tucked in your belt, not drawing anything. Just random scratches. But it felt like leaving a mark. Proof you had been here if the ship sank and that board washed ashore on some faraway beach. In the middle of the silence, a sound rang out, not wind or waves, but a faint metallic clink. A crew member had found a metal chest wedged beneath the wreckage near the hatch. It was locked. Not large, but old, etched with faded carvings. The captain approached, eyes narrowed. He said nothing, simply knelt beside it. One of the crew smashed the lock with a hammer. 3 strikes, and it cracked. The chest opened slowly. Inside, no treasure, no gold, no jewels. But something far more startling, a thick scroll and an old compass with a golden rim. A map, someone whispered. But it wasn't an ordinary map. Its markings were ancient, no city names. Just wild, spiraling lines, islands with no labels, and in the center a red spiral surrounded by letters in a script few could understand. The captain took the scroll and spread it over a wooden table. The crew gathered around, their eyes filled with questions. And among them all, a strange feeling crept in hope mixed with fear. Because whatever this map pointed to, it wasn't any normal place. Even the compass didn't behave as it should. Its needle spun slowly, then stopped, not pointing north. It pointed somewhere else, somewhere even the sun seemed reluctant to touch. And as the ship slowly turned to follow that direction, everyone on board, including you, felt something stir in their gut. A subtle pull, as if something invisible had begun to tug them forward. "Maybe this is our destination," the captain said flatly. "Or our end," muttered an old sailor. Both could be true. But no one stopped the ship. No one protested. Because on an endless, aimless sea, even a strange direction was better than no direction at all. The day faded into dusk, and the sky turned the color of a wound purple, red, and gray. The waves fell calm, but the air grew heavy, as if something waited ahead. Not an island, not land, but a place. A place with no name, a place in no sailor's tale. And as night fell, and stars began to appear like eyes peeking from the dark, you realized the real journey had just begun. That night was not an ordinary night. The sky wasn't just dark. It was as if a heavy black curtain had been pulled across it. No stars, no moon, as if the heavens themselves had closed their eyes to what was about to unfold. Oil lamps were lit aboard the ship, but their flames were small, flickering, reluctant to burn too brightly, as if even light was afraid of something yet unseen. The wind changed. It wasn't strong, but strange, swirling from all directions at once. The masts groaned, though they didn't move, and the sound of the sea, it had shifted. No longer the rush of waves, but a murmuring in a language no one understood, like someone or something whispering from within the deep. No one spoke. Everyone was silent. The crew's faces tensed, their eyes unblinking. The captain stood on the upper deck, body straight but stiff, as if bracing for something. Even the loudest sailor now clutched a small talisman to his chest, muttering prayers in a mother tongue he hadn't used since childhood. And you? You felt your body merge with the ship. Every creak of wood echoed through your bones. Your heart beat slow but heavy, and the air grew thin. Not from altitude, but from atmosphere, from feeling. In the distance, fog began to rise from the sea, slowly, like a giant hand lifting from below. It swallowed the horizon, erased the line between water and sky. This fog wasn't white nor gray, but a faint, sickly green like mold growing behind a long closed door. The captain gave a silent gesture. No loud commands, no yelling. Everyone knew this wasn't the time for noise. Ropes were tightened, sails adjusted, but all in silence, in fear, carefully arranged. You looked toward the fog, and there was something in it. Shapes, forms, but not a ship, not an island, more like a gate. Yes, a massive arch forming a doorway, standing in the sea, yet not touching it, hovering, and inside that arch, a darkness darker than night itself. Some of the crew began to cry, not loudly, but like children who knew they were far too lost. And you, though silent, felt the same, that you weren't heading to a place, but leaving behind the world you once knew. Then the ship passed through. It didn't feel like entering anything. No gust of wind, no pull. But suddenly, everything changed. The air grew warmer, but not in comfort. The sea became too calm. The sky above looked painted still and unmoving. And in the distance, music. Soft music, faint, like a child's toy being wound too slowly. The notes were simple, yet clearly not from any place you knew. No source, no direction, just present. And that alone was enough to make your hair stand on end. The captain ordered the anchor dropped, but it didn't touch bottom. The rope kept going and going, never stopping, as if this sea had no floor. As if you floated above emptiness. Someone said, "We're no longer in the same world." No one disagreed, because deep inside everyone knew that night you had crossed something, and there was no guarantee there would be a way back. When dawn should have arrived, no light came. There was no change in the color of the sky, no golden line on the horizon. Only darkness remained, as if time had halted in a night that refused to end. The ship still floated, but didn't move. The wind had vanished, and the waves seemed to have forgotten how to roll. Everything stood still. You had no sense of how much time had passed. Some of the crew began losing their grasp on it. One sailor slept twice and claimed it was midday. Another whispered that they had already died, and the ship was merely a passage to something deeper, something stranger. The captain no longer gave orders. He only stood there, staring into the fog and false sky, as if trying to count hours without the sun. Then came the sound, not human, not from wind or creaking wood, but a low tone rising from beneath the ship. A vibration like a funeral song played by the earth itself. Everyone who heard it knew something was rising, or waking up. You crouched on the deck, placing your hand flat to feel the vibration. The rhythm wasn't random. It was like a heartbeat, but not a human one. Too slow, too deep. And each thud seemed to rattle a hidden part of your mind, as if disturbing memories you didn't know you had. Some of the crew began to babble. One spoke in a language no one recognized. Another scribbled strange symbols on the cabin walls with blood from his own palm. And one simply sat, smiling, eyes wide open, gazing at the unchanging sky like he had just understood something that couldn't be explained. The captain finally ordered the ship to turn. But when the helm was moved, nothing happened. The ship would not rotate, as if the waters around you refused motion, as if you were trapped in this place by a will greater than your own. Then came the light not from the sky, but from beneath the sea, blue-green, like a glow not emitted, but watching. It moved slowly, circling under the ship, like an enormous eye sweeping along the hull, scanning the wood, evaluating, and then it vanished. "We're being inspected," someone whispered, and no one laughed. That's when you realized you weren't guests, not explorers. You were intruders, and the thing here was not pleased to be disturbed. One sail rope snapped, then another, not cut, but gnawed. There were no animals, no visible movement, but the sound of grinding echoed everywhere. The sound of bones being chewed. A black bird suddenly appeared from the fog, flying low, landing atop the mainmast. But the bird wasn't normal. Its eyes were too many, 4 on the right, 3 on the left. It stared at each crew member one by one, then opened its beak and let out a sound. Not a chirp, not a screech, but the cry of a human. The cry of a baby. The ship fell silent. Everyone held their breath. Even the waves seemed afraid to move. And the bird flew away, vanishing into the fog. But the crying, it remained, echoing in the sky inside your mind. You covered your ears, but it didn't stop. It wasn't in your ears. It was deeper in your soul. One man jumped into the sea that night, not in despair, but because he said the water was calling him. He smiled as he sank, not struggling, and from where he disappeared, bubbles rose and glowed, then faded. You began to wonder, what had you awakened? What had you touched in this place that was not a world? And was there a price to pay for simply being here? Answers might never come. But time, whatever it had become, still moved forward. And this long night was far from over. That strange morning brought a surprise no one expected. In the distance, something resembling an island slowly emerged from the fog. But its shape was wrong. Too symmetrical, too still, too perfect. As if not formed by nature, but designed by a hand unfamiliar with the real world. The island appeared to float, or at least seemed to. No waves surrounded it, no welcoming shore. Just a flat surface, smooth like old glass, tinted a sickly greenish gray that made your eyes want to look away, but your heart insisted you stare longer. The captain didn't order an approach, but the ship moved toward the island anyway, slowly, as if pulled by invisible strings. The wind was still dead. The sails hung limp. The ship slid forward, dragged by a will not its own. Everyone stood on the deck's edge, watching the silent land. No birds, no trees. Only one strange structure in the center. A tall tower without windows, etched with black lines that looked like carvings. The tower emitted a sound not heard by ears, but felt in the chest as pressure, alike. Unfinished guilt pressing down, alike. A crewman named Rami, once a priest, began whispering prayers. But his voice sounded twisted, as if each word was being returned by the air in distorted form. People stared at him, and his lips moved too fast, too unnaturally, like words not meant for human mouths. Then he stopped, eyes wide open, body frozen, and fell hard to the deck. Not unconscious, not dead, just empty. As if his mind had been taken and the body left behind as a shell. Others tried to touch him, but pulled back quickly. His skin was too cold, colder than iron in water. The captain drew his sword, not to fight, but as a gesture of fear. He planted it into the deck before him. An old custom, a sign of surrender to a greater force, maybe a plea for the ship to be spared. Then a voice was heard, not from one direction, but inside everyone's heads. Simultaneously, a single sentence in a language no one recognized, but all understood. You have seen too much. Some crewmen closed their eyes, hugging their knees, shaking, but they couldn't stop hearing it. The words echoed like a voice in a bottomless well. Even after the sound stopped, its meaning lingered, a warning, an ultimatum, or perhaps a sentence. The island's surface began to crack. Not like breaking earth, but like glass pushed from below. Green light burst from its fractures. The tower began to move, not shift, but grow. Taller, slowly, with a cracking sound like claws scraping stone. The captain gave the order retreat. Pull the sails, open the oars. Anything to move away. But the sea gave no answer. The ship stayed, anchored by chains unseen. Then the first wave came, not of water, but of air. Like the exhale of something massive, just awakened. The pressure forced everyone to their knees. Nausea struck. Many vomited blood. Rami, silent for so long, began to smile. And from his mouth came a voice, not his, not human, not animal. The voice said, "The door has opened." And you realized this night was not just about survival. It was about sanity. Because the world you entered didn't need your body. What it sought was something deeper, older, more malleable. They say madness comes slowly, like morning fog. But that night, insanity fell like a hailstorm from an invisible sky. The sailors' steps grew uncertain. Some began talking to themselves, muttering names of people who had never been on the ship. One man burst into laughter at the stern, then leaped into the sea without a sound, like he had been promised something better below. No one tried to save him. They just stood there, frozen by a fear that had no name. The sky changed, but not like sunset or storm. It was as if repainted by a hand unfamiliar with color. Black was no longer black. It became a kind of living darkness, like raw flesh, and the stars. Yes, the stars changed positions. They no longer grouped like constellations, they moved, slowly. Forming symbols only eyes that had lost hope could comprehend. The captain no longer spoke. He stood near the mainmast, holding a rope like a man awaiting judgment. No orders came, just long breaths and hollow eyes. In his hand, he clutched a small locket, perhaps from a wife. But now, even that memory felt distant, like a story from someone else's life. Then the sky opened, not cracked, not split, opened like an eyelid. And behind it, something unutterable, because no human language has words low enough to name it. Not large, not small, not solid, not shadow. It simply was. Like a mistake in reality. Some of the crew began to pray, not aloud, but with their bodies. They knelt. bowed, scratched their chests as if trying to inscribe scripture into flesh. One of them, his face pale as bone, whispered, "It sees us." And everyone understood who it was, though no one had ever been told a name. The sea changed color, from blue to black, then to red like blood left too long in the sun. Waves froze, melted, then hissed as if breathing. The ship began to creak. The wood groaned. Not from waves, but from pressure rising from within. As if the ship, too, was afraid. As if it wanted to flee, but could not. In the middle of it all, Rami stood. He was no longer empty, but full, with what none could say. He opened his mouth, and from it came a song, but not a human song. The notes were too perfect, too symmetrical, like the geometry of sound. The song made some sailors collapse, trembling, weeping, not from sadness, but because their minds couldn't hold harmony that didn't belong. The tower on the island now split open, bloomed like a black flower. Inside, no light, just space, empty, yet pressing. As if the space knew it was being watched, and it didn't like it. The captain finally moved. Slowly, he walked to the edge of the ship. He didn't speak, didn't look at anyone. But before he leaped into the sea, he said one sentence: "Better never to know." Then he vanished beneath the surface, like a stone sinking into mud. No one tried to take command. No one wanted to be responsible for what came next. The ship was now like an orphan adrift in shattered reality, without purpose, without map, without future. And the night was not over. That night was still young. The night thickened like ink stains in still water. Time lost meaning. No one knew whether hours had passed or if the world had simply stopped turning. The crew sat silent on the deck, empty eyes staring at a sky that kept changing form. No star stayed the same twice. They pulsed, split, devoured one another. The sky became another ocean, more violent, deeper, and hungrier. Even the sea had changed its nature. No longer a surface hiding life, but a thin skin covering something that wanted out. Its ripples came not from wind, but from something moving below, large and patterned, like the breath of a formless chest. Occasionally, from within the water came sounds, not splashes, not waves, but a kind of wet, old calling, like the voice of someone drowning who never dies. One by one, the sailors began to experience things they couldn't explain. One saw his mother's face in the sky. Another felt his body grow weightless, like cotton, though his feet still touched the floor. Another saw a shadow of himself walking across the deck, grinning cruelly. But the worst was the slow unraveling of the mind, like being quietly stripped until only breath remained. But most terrifying was the voice in the mind. A voice with no mouth, speaking a language like fire hissing in a well. It didn't command, it reminded that all this had happened before. That this was not the first ship. That this sea wasn't a place, but a door. And doors are always open for those weak enough to wander through. Some crewmen began carving strange signs into the ship's wood. Concentric circles, inverted triangles, symbols like letters, but from no known alphabet. They didn't know why. They just felt they must. That maybe, if they wrote enough, they could stop it. But they didn't know what it was. Rami, now fully something else, walked slowly like a priest in a dark rite. He touched each sailor's head in turn. Some wept. Some smiled. Others simply died. No one questioned it, because by now, death might be the only way home. The wind returned, but not from this world. The air carried no scent of salt, only the damp soil of an old grave mixed with rust and rotten flowers. And with that wind came fog, not just blinding, but numbing. Some sailors forgot their own names, forgot why they were there, forgot they had ever been human, and the fog brought song. Not from mouths, from wood, from rope, from sail. The ship itself began to sing a low, endless note, like a hymn for a voyage with no return. The song sank into bones, clung to skin, made hearts beat off rhythm. Then, through the fog, appeared another ship. Or the shadow of one. It didn't move, didn't sway. Just floated, like a memory too heavy to sink. The ship looked from another time. Torn sails. Bent masts. No fire, but all of it blackened, as if burned by a hateful gaze. And on its deck stood a still crew, staring. No faces, no eyes. Just human shapes, standing like wax figures in a nightmare. And everyone knew they were looking at themselves. The versions that never returned, the ones waiting to replace them. And you know in that instant, you will not survive this night. But maybe you will remember it, if you're lucky enough to wake up. And when dawn finally came, it brought no light, no orange glow, no gentle blush across the horizon, no seabirds, no crashing waves. The ocean became glass that reflected nothing. Some of the crew sat with bowed heads, like statues sculpted by a hopeless hand. Their eyes were open, but they saw nothing, as if the world was no longer worth witnessing. Only a sudden shift, as if the world changed its skin to a color slightly less dark. Sky and sea had fused into a single gray page too wide for anyone to write upon. He no longer spoke, no longer sang. He simply stood. The sound disturbed the chest, made hearts beat faster without cause. Each time it rang, the sea rippled slightly as if it too responded. And on his face there was no emotion, only a calm more frightening than rage. Whispers with no mouths. A brief laugh like a child's, then silence. But with his own finger, using blood from a small wound on his hand. The words were in no human language. But all who saw understood. But this time it carried the ship. The ship was waking, not as an object, but as a being. It now breathed with breath deep and ancient. That the world they left behind, a world with land, trees, homes, and warm bread, could no longer be touched. They weren't just lost in place, but lost in themselves. Direction became fiction, and the journey no longer about destination, only survival. As if the night hadn't lost, just paused to breathe. That dawn was not relief, but a brief interlude in destruction. But the wood refused to burn. Whether damp or rejected by the world, fire was no longer an element here. One of them, a thin young man who once told stories at night, tried to scream, but his voice came out like a breath. No echo, no response. On the ship, silence still coiled like iron chains. Rami stood by the mainmast, staring at a horizon that no longer had a line. Letters that would never arrive, written to children they'd never see again. Two wives who might have forgotten, two mothers who once combed their hair in the afternoon. The letters carried a final flicker of hope that someone might read them someday and know they had existed. A few sailors tried to light a fire. No one knew where they were. No land. No direction. The compass in the helm spun slowly, choosing no north. And amid it all, from a great distance, came the sound of a bell. Soft, seemed to rise from beneath the sea. Not metal struck, but something calling, reminding. Someone began to cry, a quiet cry, not from sorrow, but realization. That they were no longer fully human, that something had changed within. Some tried to write letters, behind sails, on the ship's walls. Below deck, new sounds emerged, footsteps that belonged to no one. Rami finally descended the mast. He took an old cloth, tore it into a long strip. At its end, he wrote something. Not with a pen. He tied the strip to a sail rope. And the wind began to move again. Not with speed, but with direction. A direction that was not north, east, south, or west. A direction known only to those who had lost everything, except the will to remain alive. And the voyage continued. Without end, without return, without name. Only a story that would linger in the dreams of children and in the whispers of waves that never grow tired. And if one night you wake, perhaps by a dream with no face, or by the sound of waves that should not be heard through your bedroom window, remember this: there is a ship that still sails. It is not marked on maps. It is not found in history books, but it exists, and it waits, always waits. This ship is not of this world, but not quite of another either. It exists in between, in the cracks between reality and dream. It is moved by winds from a place with no language and guided by the deepest human desire, to escape even when we don't know from what. Those who board are no longer sailors, not pirates, not merchants, not soldiers. They are stories. Fragments of souls trapped in a journey that cannot finish. They breathe, but they do not live. They walk, but they do not arrive. And the night is their only home. Each night their sails flutter in silence. Each night fog follows. And each night someone somewhere dreams of them. Dreams of wet wooden decks, of salt too sharp to bear, of a sky that knows no direction. And sometimes, in that dream, you feel the sea spray on your face. You hear a name that is not yours being called. You see a shadow waiting behind a torn sail. Maybe you'll think it's just a nightmare. Maybe you'll turn, pull your blanket tighter, and try to sleep again. But sometimes, just sometimes, someone never wakes up. They have boarded that ship and become part of a crew that has no land, no time, no end. And if someday you walk along a beach and find a piece of blackened wood etched with strange letters that seem to glow under moonlight. Don't touch it. Don't take it home. Don't keep it, because that piece is an invitation, and the sea always waits for an answer.